Hello and welcome to Symbox Showcase video. In this video, I'll show you how quick and easy it is to integrate a new system, in this case via API, into an existing workflow in Symbox. So the process I'll be showing is an example process of employee onboarding. So in this theoretical process, an employee is joining a company and the admin user has been asked to enter the details of the employee and choose what access they require. And based off the options they choose there, it will kick off a new workflow and perform APIs and RPA in order to achieve those items. So if I go into the process view of this and search for the process, which is add employee, you can see that we've got two start events. We've got our GUI, which is using the interface I showed you, and we've also got an API start event where we can be posted the data of the new employee. And then either way, it will kick off the flow, which will be triggering either APIs, RPAs, or manual tasks, all of which is handled within the business logic is handled within the gateway just there. So what I'll be doing now is connecting to a new system into our workflow, and I'll be doing this timed with our stopwatch at the bottom there. So in this instance, I'm going to be connecting to Jira in order to create a new task for the team to actually onboard that employee, to actually sit with them and make sure they're happy in their new company. So I've just dragged in an outbound connector, and I've just dragged in an message mapper. The outbound connector will perform that request. The message mapper will get the response back from Jira and then store the response back into the Symbox data model. Then I'll connect these with flows and connect them all together and join it into the existing workflow. Then I'll go ahead and name the flow, because I'll be using that in a minute when I configure the business logic within the gateway. So if I right click on the gateway and say properties, there's existing logic for the flows, and to configure new logic, you say which flow and then choose the data you want to look at, and I'll choose payroll in this instance, and basically I'll make it so that if payroll is selected, then we will always go to the Jira task. Now that could have been dynamic, so I could have compared it to a different dataset field, but I'll say equal to 1 for this one. So it's just a Boolean true or false for that payroll. Then you need to configure an outbound connector. So we will add in a new connector. Within Symbox, there's no code to do connect to a new system via API. You simply go to our outbound connectors and say add connector. So you're asked to fill in the name and the URL in the description. So let's type in the name here. The URL will come from the system you're looking to integrate with. So if we bring up Jira's API spec, we've got create an issue using a project key and field names. Perfect. So we'll take that endpoint, and that's the JSON that they expect within that payload. And I'll just modify that endpoint just so it's connecting to Symbox's instance of Jira. And I'll go ahead and type in a description for this outbound connection. So create a Jira task, let's say, and I'll enable it so it becomes visible within our process flow. Once you've added it, you can then go in and flesh out further details. We've got a number of different authentication types, OAuth, HMAC, Basic. For this, I've got a Jira API user setup. So I'll add those details in there. And then for all of the different items you can configure. And it's simply a case of referring back to the documentation of the system you're looking to connect to. You can see here they want content type and application JSON within their header. And you just simply enter the details within here. And now that's static in this case, but it could be dynamic. So for example, those path segments we've got here, again, it's static, but it could be dynamic. So it could be driven from data within a data set we've got in Symbox. For the body, again, let's have a look at the API spec. That's the payload they expect. So I've taken that and I'll put that in a notepad file. And then I'll upload that into Symbox. And Symbox will pass through that JSON and then show me the JSON elements, and then ask you to configure the JSON elements and say which data do you want to be presented in that JSON elements. So I'll configure it against my employee data set in Symbox, and that's the process instance there. And then I want to pass through for this instance, I want to say the full name of the employee, so we can pass that through to Jira so they've got that. So we'll save that. And now we'll go ahead and test it. So in Symbox, you can test this outbound connection. So let's change this to testing 1, 2, 3, and then send that request. So you can see that's the request out. And then if I minimize that, expand that, this is the response back, so 201, so it's happy, and that's the JIRA ID and key they've sent back to us. So we know our connection works. So let's go ahead and go back to our process flow, find the new connection we've created, and say save. So we can also map the response, and that works in a very similar way to the JSON parser you just saw. But let's go ahead and test whether we can successfully hit JIRA in the workflow. So we enter in some test data, and then enter in the phone number, and then choose the access required. Let's also upload a picture. Choose payroll, HR, admin, IT, and choose the clearance, date joining, and let's add in some notes. So pass that through to other systems as well. Let's go ahead and onboard this employee. So you can see now it's actually returned, and on our list there you can see that's the entries being made. So if we go into JIRA as an end user and let's have a look at their board, you can see here we've got testing 1, 2, 3. That was our test one, and that's our final test name. So within 5 minutes 22, we've successfully integrated a new system into our existing workflow on the Symbox platform.